we'll roll the video to give you an idea. We hope the technology will work.
I wanted to show you just around the shop and what I've got going on in the shop. We've seen many times, I'm sure, that I've got the keel and the stem, the 4 foot of orc was laid out in the back of the shop here. This is actually where orc is going to be built. We'll actually be pulled forward and we'll get more probably up into here just so you can walk around the stem of it. And she's 40 feet, so it's quite a boat for a small shop like this. It's going to be you know, tight, but that's okay. You know, as long as we've got our mind on what we're doing and not on how little space there is, we should be able to make out really well. The next thing I want to show you is my little arrangement of power tools that I've got in the middle of the shop right here. This is a kind of a different kind of arrangement than you see normally, but it suits me really nice. I've got it in the middle of the shop because I don't have an overhead door right here, so I don't have any boats coming in right here. And basically what I've been trying to do with this whole design of placing this equipment is make it so that I don't just negate all the rest of the room in this whole shop.
You know, I love it when a boat like this comes together. So here it is now. We're going to oil the inside of it. That's the only thing we've got left. The construction is complete. The next thing we're going to do after we do that is load it on a trailer, and it's going to go in the water. Today, we're going to take it for a ride, have a little bit more fun. Now we're living. I'll tell you, there's nothing like being up on a plane in a work skip like this. Nothing like it. It's fun. It's really something else. It's got great noise. I love the sound of the water hitting the bottom of the boat. The thing's riding really nice, you know, and you're going pretty fast here. You can get white oak planking was sawn in Denmark, and we've got quite a stock of it, enough to do the entire bottom all the way up to the waterline. Some of these planks are awful big and awful long. The garboard planks below this broad strake are 4 inches thick at the bottom and 3 inches at the top. The next broad strake tapers from 3 inches to 2 3/4, and the next one is going to taper from 2 3/4 to 2 1/2. The rest of the bottom is going to be 2 1/2 inches thick. But we've applied it in a little bit different manner than normal. It's a traditional planking job, and all of these planks on any boat this size would have to be steamed in order to be twisted into position because they're just too stiff otherwise. And I've been watching over the years people pulling planks like this out of steam boxes and running around in quite a panic with 6 or 8 guys to get the things up in position, and still having quite a bit of problems because by the time they go to squeeze it down or force it into position, it's probably mostly cooled already. So we decided that what we would try to do and have been doing is we slide the plank into a plastic bag, and then we clamp it right into position against the side of the boat. We can't get all the twist into it right away. Then we insert a couple of steam hoses in the plastic bag and heat the plank up right in position, clamp it right down solid, let it steam for a couple more hours, because what happens is it's bent now, and the lignin, which is the glue that holds the fibers together in the wood, gets melted, and it allows all the fibers to actually slide on each other, so that once it's cooled off and we unclamp it, there's basically no recoil whatsoever. These planks can be unclamped or unfastened, and they will maintain that shape. Just about everything we do in here is done a little bit differently than the way most people do it, all in an effort to cut the size of the crew down and get things done very efficiently. One of the tools that I use quite often is a chainsaw. I just have to use one. They're fast, they cut quickly. I can do different things with it, even in boat work. I can do some ripping, cross-cutting. It's just a great tool to have around. I have to keep my chainsaw sharp all the time because it's the only way that it cuts well. There's different methods of attaining that, but I want to use the oldest method there is, the method that was used when chainsaws first came out, and that was to file them with a file. Now there's other ways to go today, but this is still the best method to use. It's a method that anybody can use at home or otherwise on the bench in the shop, and it comes out great if you know what you're doing.
Now I'm clamping down this really simple guide system here. It's just a couple hunks of 2x4. We're going to cut the sides first, right down both sides, and hopefully not cut the red line away. The way the spark plug sockets are set, that's the depth. Because if I put the saw straight up and down, then it cuts the depth. They also manage the distance because the sockets are rammed up against the end of the 2x4, so it can't get carried away no matter what, and I can follow the line. I can concentrate on following the line and not worry about it kicking back. Then we're going to make a bunch of cuts down the middle right there. And it's nice and easy to go straight because I've got the saw sharpened at 12 degrees rather than 30 or 25.
I had said I put Portland cement in the seams, and this is your Portland cement right here. And it's never failed or came out. It's even adhered to the ends of the planking, because when you put it up, the ends of this particular planking, the cedar, is porous. So that cement works its way right into that grain, and it's stuck between those two planks. And believe me, that's the best seam compound in a spot that money can buy right there. Something that hardens up, that can't work its way out. What I'm going to do is actually hold the chainsaw up there in this manner here, and then cut that right off with the chainsaw.
So I'm here scoffing a few planks at the shear with this 38-foot friendship sloop, and in order to do it, we have to spring the planks out. And in order to do that, we have to remove some of the cotton. And in order to do that, we have to remove some of the seam compounds. This is the plank we're going to put in, the shear plank. And like I just did back after and showed you, I'm just going to use a scraper to scuff up the surface of this plank a little bit. It's nice and flat, but I want to raise the grain a little bit before I spread glue on it. Pumped it right out of the gun, and then I just take that tooth trowel and spread it around the tooth trowel, and that just meters it all over the place so we know exactly how much glue we've got, and on both surfaces. Now we're going to put the plank in position. I've got some pre-drilled holes there that we line up with, and get a couple screws involved with those holes, and then apply a few clamps. And the reason why I've scoffed this rather than use a butt block is that's a tremendous amount of glue area in there. And believe me, it is 100% glued up and stuck there permanently. And it just doesn't allow any space for any water to get in there. It's considerably stronger. It's got a lot more continuity to it. And it's just, I believe, to be a very, very permanent fix. I'm up forward here on the starboard side, and we've got most all the planking done. We're down to the very last plank that we need to put on this side. And people ask me quite often about this seam work. How is it that I got that seam work to have such a nice consistency and be so very narrow and still be able to caulk it and those kinds of things? I'm going to use a wallpaper seam roller to actually roll up and down the two outboard edges of that particular plank and just squash the wood a little bit without removing any of the wood at all. What I'm going to do now is take a hook. Now this was a little reefing hook. It was designed to actually remove material, but I've reshaped it. I've pointed the very leading edge of it. So it's kind of shaped like a little bit of a football. So it doesn't go in there and scrape any material out. This leading edge is narrower than it is in the middle, and the trailing edge is narrower. So it just forces the wood apart. It doesn't remove any wood. So I can put it in the seam very easily and just draw it along, and it doesn't remove any material. But it makes that seam a consistent width. I've used every kind of planer, and I finally settled on a Ryobi. Now, some people think that it's kind of like a light-duty tool, and, maybe they conceived it that way, but I don't use it that way. I use it in some pretty heavy-duty situations, really. I'm just taking a very little bit off of each corner. I've got 8 corners to grind down here. We've got that task done very, very easily and quickly. Now I'm going to head back over to my bench and to my planer. Now the next thing I want to do is just place this blade across the infeed table here, and I'm just going to pinch it down with one finger and show you that the cutting surface of the blade is shorter than the infeed table is wide, or the outfeed table. One of the things that's really important to me when I'm planing overhead, whether I'm under a hull and I'm planing scoffs in a plank like this, I want to make sure that it's ejecting out that way so it's not blowing in my face. I can't have it ejecting this way like a Makita planer. It just won't work out for me. Then if I turn it around and I'm planing the other way, I want it to eject out that way. So it has to eject out both sides, and it has to eject really, really well. We cut it so that it would fit in there, and I reduced the diameter of it. It's like a spring, and I put it in there so that it wouldn't block where the chips come up right here, but it blocks off half of the air slot. So the air is forced to come up on that side or that end of the tube. Now, when I put a plug in one side, it blows out the other side, and if I put the plug in this side, it blows out the other side, and it blows a tremendous amount of air out. It does not jam up any longer, you know, so it's very easy to use.
Okay, so hopefully you have a little hint at the kind of things that Lou does. So I thought I'd spend a minute explaining how did we get Louis here? Well, there's one of our woodworking members, Walt, who's here, socially knows Louis, and he came up to me a few months back and said, "There's this guy that builds boats, Louis. Would you like to meet him?" And I had been watching Tips from a Shipwright for probably the length of the show. It's been broadcast for about 10 years. And I was amazed that one of our members knew Louis, and he made the introduction, and here we are. He's a fascinating character, as you'll soon see. His show, Tips from a Shipwright, is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, boat building show on the YouTube channel. He has 200,000 approximately subscribers, 48 million views internationally. That's unbelievable, and growing. I think maybe it's up to 49 million maybe now at this point. And he's considered by the popular press the Norm Abrams of boat building. So I think we're very lucky to have him here this evening. This year's project is the Orca. You saw some of that in development. It's the 50th anniversary of the movie Jaws. And so to support that, Louis decided to build an exact replica of the Orca. And when it's done, it'll be Orca. And we've been in touch with folks at Universal. It'll be actually technically Orca 3. The boat that actually floated and was a boat was Orca 1. They then bought another boat, Orca 2, and that's the boat that sank, that the shark jumps up on and so forth. That was later abandoned in Menemsha on Martha's Vineyard. And we were able to salvage a piece of that. And so a piece of that, of Orca 2, will be a part of the build that Louis is working on. And we're going to be distributing samples to folks as well, part of the tradition. So Orca 3 is underway. If you go on the Tips from a Shipwright site, you can follow it from episode 1 all the way to, I think now it is maybe episode 14 or 15. So please take a look. I think one of the things that makes the show so popular is that unlike other programs that are boat building or even woodworking, Louis explains in detail how he does what he does. It's not just the building. He explains in very good detail exactly how he works, especially in how he modifies tools. This is like the little Ryobi plane you saw. There are skill saws and things that he's modified. That's part of the magic. And he explains in the videos how he does that and how he can accomplish things much more efficiently or safely than conventional tools just out of the box. So with that, I'm going to introduce Louis Sozed. The most difficult thing about Louis is pronouncing his name. And I asked him before I came here, I said, remind me again about that. But I also want to point to Tom. Where's Tom? He's over here in the corner. Tom is the videographer. So he is the person, all the videos you see are his handiwork, and it's a tremendous amount of work. So he's the unseen part of this. And one other thing before I let Louis take over is the NBC Channel 10 News sent a videographer there this past week. And next Tuesday, I think 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock news, there'll be a video that they've produced And we've been told that's the first in a series that may end up on the Today Show. So we're all interesting developments. So anyway, all right. So without further ado, Louis.
Well, I got to say that let me get over my emotions here for a second. It's nice to be here. I'm glad. I'm really happy that you people appreciate what I've been doing, and anybody that's into woodworking, I appreciate. I really like it. You know, I started woodworking when I was a very, very young boy. My father was a commercial fisherman, and we had wooden boats. We had to work on them. They weren't big boats, but we had to do all kinds of different things, like put planks in them and refasten them and alter them in different ways, you know, for his use. And so I got started doing woodworking probably when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So I've been doing it ever since. And I became a professional when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I actually worked on American Eagle, the 12-meter American Eagle, in 1963. So I've been around for a long time, and oddly enough, I feel like a teenager, and I'm getting involved in some pretty good-sized projects. You know, it's not my heart to do little projects, because to me I wouldn't call them a waste of time, but they don't do me a lot of good. I can't earn a lot of money and stack them up, you know, one right after another. So I've kind of abandoned that. I've done that my whole life. You know, I've done repair work my whole life, and I've worked in the boatyards, you know, and all kinds of different things, and I've done a lot of very large projects, whole new bottoms under very large power boats and different things like that. I rebuilt Intrepid, the 12-meter Intrepid, one into the other, and so I've done a lot of work. I've had a lot of experience with power tools. You know, I have actually things to say about some of the things that we've already been talking about, and especially the push sticks. You know, so, you know, when I was a young kid, you know, I got involved because we had wooden boats, like I said, and I remember looking at this one little wooden boat that we had years ago. It was a Beetle Cat, you know, and it made me kind of get involved in design work a little bit, because it used to sit out there in the morning and it was bowed down. You know, they just don't have enough displacement up forward, and when you get out and roll away from it, they look terrible on the morning. So we used to have to put a bucket of water back aft in order to trim the thing so that I could even get to shore. I couldn't leave. It was terrible. You know, so I used to think, well, you know, displacement. When I was like 5, 6 years old, I was thinking about displacement and, you know, planing surfaces and all kinds of shapes, and why did this boat go faster than this boat, and, you know, all those kinds of things. So, you know, it's been an experience, actually. I've done quite a bit of boating, but I'm not a big enthusiast in boating. Actually, I'm more of an enthusiast in the working on boats, you know, in the woodworking itself, you know, and the tools. Tools have always intrigued me, you know, but I'd have to say that an awful lot of tools, when I buy them and go to use them, I don't know, they don't seem to work just right for me, you know, because I got a high standard, I guess, maybe too high, I don't know, but I end up having to alter all kinds of tools, and I come up with all kinds of different procedures and different ways of going about things that other people, you know, haven't come up with, and you know, I'm certainly willing to answer any kind of questions about any of my work, and you know, I just think that the project I got going on right now is the building of Orca. That's quite a good-sized boat, you know, and I'm 76 years old. So, you know, it's odd even that I would even consider doing something like that, I think. And a lot of people think I shouldn't be. Other people are very enthused about it and think that I should be. So, you know, I don't know where I actually stand with all of that, but I try not to think about it too much, because I'm obsessed with thinking about the actual building of it, not whether or not I'm going to live long enough to do it or otherwise. And I think that's going to be one of the things that allows me to be able to get through this project. And I'd have to say that, you know, since I started it's it's changed my work quite a bit because I've slowed down a little bit because I have to do videos of the work and different things like that. So it's changed the work a lot, you know, but I think it's for the good, you know, and I love people to learn what I've learned. You know, I'm certainly willing to transfer any kind of information or any kind of knowledge that I have to anybody, and so I've had a good time doing that. I think it's a lot of fun, actually, and you know, being popular and trying to earn some money. My basic idea is to earn some money. You know, that's what I'm trying to do, is earn some money through the YouTube and Patreon and sponsorship and different things like that. And Tom is my videographer, partner, and helper at the same time, all at the same time, which is working out really, really well. Tom Walsh, we've been introduced already. And then there's John Conway. John has become, I would say, a partner of mine. We're partners at this point. And he's handling all these different raising of money and all kinds of different stuff that I just couldn't do. You know, I wouldn't be able to do it. You know, I can't think about all those things all at the same time. I'm a guy at 76 years old, I admit it, I need an awful lot of help. And I've got an awful lot of help, an awful lot of help. And some very, very good help, very good help. And like I say, I got a high standard, so I need somebody that really knows their business to be even around, you know. So, you know, that's basically what I have to say about that. I think the best thing for me to do is probably just open it up for questions, because that's kind of, it kind of gives me a starting point, you know. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. It's just, I think maybe that's a long enough introduction. And why don't I just open it up for questions? So anybody that would like to ask me any kind of questions about my work, about the videos, about the video business, about YouTube, about, you know, tools or anything, I'm certainly willing to go over it. Maybe what I should do first, if I even do that though, is to show you these few tools. This is the electric plane that you saw me using in the video, and it's just a Ryobi electric plane. And the reason why I use this plane is because it was designed originally to blow out either side, and it had this little flapper thing in here that you'd flip, and it would blow out to one side, and you'd flip it the other way and blow out the other side. But the only problem with that is it used to just jam up all the time, just constantly jam up with chips, and I'd end up having to clean it out, and it just drive me out of my mind. So what happens is I end up altering the tools as they give me trouble. You know, I cut the little flapper out of there, and then it ejected much better, but it wasn't ejected far enough, so I was looking inside of it, and this one's designed a little bit differently than most of them. It's got two slots in there. One of the slots is where the chips comes off, and the other slot is where the air comes up. So what I wanted to do was see if I could speed the air up somehow, and I didn't want to alter the fan. So what I did was I closed off half of the aperture where the air comes up, and it sped the air up a lot. It probably ejects chips 3 times further than it did when it was new. You know, I also chewed away with a chisel, just reached down in there with a wood chisel and cut the corners out of where the chips come up. So all of those different things, you know, when you buy one, you know, you don't expect this table to be even with this table, but you do expect it to be parallel, you know, at least parallel, you know, as if it, you know, it should line up, and they don't. And I don't think any plane, no matter what plane I would get and try, none of them line up. So you end up having to put it on a belt sander, you know, and sand the bottom of it until you get the 2 things to line up. All kinds of different stuff. The other thing I like about this particular plane is that the blades are adjustable. A lot of the planes that you buy, you put this little strip in there, it's like a little carbide blade on some of them, and then they've got this other piece of material, a piece of metal that goes on there, and you bolt it down. But you can't adjust the height of the blade. So typically, they're planing off way too much material. They're almost impossible to use. You just get yourself in all kinds of trouble with it because it's cutting way too deep. The other problem with them is the blades are too long. They're hanging out the edge of the table. So when you're using it, if you were to tip it a tiny bit, oh my God, what a mess that'll make. So, you know, I pick something up like this, I use it a little bit, You know, the other thing is that most all the planes that I bought over the years have tried, and this one included, this one's not as bad as the others, but the handle's up on the top of it. It's almost impossible to use like this. You wouldn't use a hand plane with the hand up on top of it like this. They put the hand on a Stanley plane behind it, you know, because that's where you want to push, you know. So basically, I ended up using a plane like this for hours on end, you know, maybe fairing an entire hull of a boat, or doing those scarves you showed me. I showed you with the chainsaw cut, then I tuned them up with this thing. And I need to be able to have the trigger stay down, because I want to just bring like a little, this thing is probably been, here we go. I just pinch it down with a little zip tie, and then I can hold the plane in the back like this. So I can have two hands on it. Typically I have two hands on this plane every time I use it. Very seldomly do I use it in one hand. And the only other thing I can tell you is just that I just have this is the top of a little spray can or something, I think. I can put it in this side, it blows out that side, and if I want to blow the other way, I just put it on the other side. So it's it made a tool out of a tool that you can go and buy. I would tell you, I don't know, if you were trying to decide how much more useful it would be, I would tell you it's at least 10 times more useful than it would have been when I bought it. I couldn't use it for anything. And most of the other ones I can't use for anything. So, you know, that is the plane that I prefer. This right here is a Milwaukee skill saw that I've been using for years and years. I don't know why. I can't seem to wear it out. And I've altered it to do a procedure that I actually invented called, it was progressive bevel sawing. So as I saw, I can change the angle of the saw. Like, you just put on the ratchet the other way. You see, as I saw, I can change the angle, and I've got a readout right here, so I know what angle it's on. Because I do progressive bevel sawing, carvel planking. It's actually progressive bevel sawing edge set, which means that one of the edges on the plank is perfectly straight one end to the other. No matter what the shape of the boat is or what the shape of the plank is when it's on the boat, it might be edge set into position. Well, they're also edge set, twisted, and bent, and progressive bevel sawn. And I've invented a system where I can actually saw planks like that on a bench and have them fit without fitting whatsoever. And you can't put human hair between the seams on a progressive bevel. Typically, they might have maybe a 3-degree change in the length of the plank, and this saw right here just accomplishes the whole thing. And the way I use it, I think there's a video on another channel that I was on for a while called Bristol Shipwrights that shows you that whole procedure, but I can show you that all over again. The other thing I did bring, I brought a couple of sharpening stones with me because I think it's interesting to people, you know, how I might go about sharpening, like say a Stanley plane on my chisels or different things like that. And I probably do it considerably different than most people do. And, you know, there's requirements, you know, I don't have any time to waste, you know. So I need to get these things, and when I want to sharpen something, I want to sharpen it, and I want to sharpen it right now. And I don't want to go put it down and go get another blade. I want to take that blade and sharpen it, you know. So, you know, I'm in the middle of doing something. I don't want it to take the afternoon to sharpen the blade. So I've developed techniques for doing that, and oddly enough, it requires that you grind the blade first, because you want to shape the edge of the blade to a nice hollow grind all the way down till it's got a little burr on the edge and everything. So, you know, you haven't got a spot on that blade left after you grind it that's been sharpened in on the sharpening stone and everything like that. You know, you want to hollow grind it right to the very edge, and then I use just a cheap sharpening stone, whether it's a carborundum stone, but I can tell you it's not an Arkansas stone or any expensive stone. And there's just methods of using the stone, and then methods of getting the burr off, and all those kinds of things that I use that very seldomly do you see anybody do it, and I would think that very often I get an argument about going with people about using a bench grinder, because they say that you can't use a bench grinder to sharpen a blade. Well, I say that's the only tool to use. I use a aluminum oxide wheel instead of a carbon rendering wheel, and I use one that's either worn or I'll wear it by maybe sharpening some or cutting the very ends of these blades down. And actually, as you're cutting that carbide blade, you're also cutting the stone because the carbide's so hard. So I round the stone so the edge of it's not flat. Right? So then basically when you're sharpening, you've only got sparks coming off in one little spot, and you can keep track of it. And you don't heat the blade up, but then you have a method of holding onto the blade so you can, like, it's like a bed knife grinder. You want to go across that grinder very quickly, bzz, 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 very quickly. You know, just take a little, this tiniest bit off, but you can grind for I don't know how long, and then touch the blade, no heat, no heat. So I don't overheat the blades when I'm hollow grinding them, even with a bench grinder. Now that's probably, you know, like I say, that's, you know, other than the way most people would think or have been taught to stay away from the bench grinder. And I say, I can't even accomplish the task without a bench grinder. I don't know how to do it, you know, so, you know, I have to do it, but I wasn't taught how to do it. You know, I learned it myself. So you come up with your own methods, and, you know, everybody that does work on woodworking comes up with their own methodology on all kinds of different things, you know, jigs. I mean, I must have made, I don't know, 500 jigs to do different things, you know, and, you know, they're very beneficial. So, you know, let me just, let me open it up for questioning. I've got one right in the back.
Yeah, thanks so much. You mentioned bending wood and how the heating process melts the lignum and then it realigns. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember, like, I'm trying to go from science to practice. My science teacher in high school taught me that when steam turns into water, it releases extra energy. So there's more to it than just temperature. And I'm wondering if that's why we all use steam. Like heating wood to 250 degrees Fahrenheit or steaming it at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm kind of wondering, given the experience of it, we're like, why are we using steam?
I would tell you that trying to heat something in any other method other than steam or boiling, you can come close to the point where you're going to catch it on fire. It's very hard to control. Water boiling or steam is a controlled temperature, and it's the temperature that you want. So, you know, I mean, I boil wood a lot without steaming at all. It does the same exact thing. But, you know, all the things that, you know, even a scientist might come up with, you know, might be something I don't even know about. So, you know, I really don't know what to say about releasing extra energy or anything like that, but all I know is you want to get the wood up to a certain temperature. And doing it any other way than steam or boiling, you could have some serious problems.
You get some smoke and stuff. So, but if you were bending the back of like a chair for your dining table, you would either boil it or steam it. And if you put it in the oven, you would expect there would be problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know of an oven that would take a 20-foot long board. And I have trouble catching things on fire when I'm cooking in my own oven. I would just stay away. I would stay away from any kind of dry heat.
Thank you.
It's kind of a naive question, but when you're replacing planking with a new board, do you just use green wood since you're going to steam it and bend it, or do you have to
Well, it really depends on what the boat was made out of. You know, is the boat dry when you're working on it, or was it recently out of the water? Is it swelled up? You know, is it shrunken up? You know, what type of wood's available to you? You know, so I've had to use every kind of wood imaginable, every kind of cedar, you know, and mahoganies and oak planking, from red oak planking to white oak planking. So it's really the situation that kind of controls, you know, that, what you're gonna use and how you're gonna go about it. Now, how tight you fit it in, you know, how much space you might leave for caulking, all those kinds of things. I mean, you know, it's a varying situation. You know?
Yeah, I had a question too. Both of the tools you have there are corded. Do you have a thought about corded tools versus battery-powered tools?
Well, you know, I like battery-powered drills. I do, you know, but they have a limited duty. There's only so much work you can do with them. They don't have any real super powerful ones out, you know. And as far as corded or battery-powered circular saws and everything, I'm not much of a fan of those. I'm not much of a fan of any of the newer, like Festool equipment that has, they say they have a brain. Well, that brain drives me crazy because when I'm sawing something, you know, when I'm sawing along, it's all fine, but then I want to slow down. When I slow down, the saw slows down. So then that drives me nuts. When I slow down, I want the saw to speed up as if it's got a lighter duty and it just normally wants to speed up. So the thing is speeding up and slowing down and you have no control over it. So when you start to cut again, it slows down even more and then it starts speeding up. You got no control of that. I can't stand it. You know, so I don't use any equipment. I got enough brains. I don't need my tool to have a brain. So.
This might be a weird question, but we had the pleasure of visiting the IYRS last year. Have you been to their shop and does it compare to yours? Because yours sounds like a custom version of what they do.
Oh, well, their shop's got millions of dollars behind it. That's all I can say. My shop has got Social Security, so that's a major difference right there. And you know, it's a much bigger operation. You know, they don't do the same things that I do. I don't really know exactly what they're involved in these days. The schooner that I was working on that we showed in the video was actually done on their property, but it wasn't a project that the school was involved in.
Have you ever taught there, or?
I have never taught there. I've just never,
different world.
I think there was a time when it wasn't too hard to be unaccepted in the whole field, even if you had long hair or whatever else it might be. I don't think I was an acceptable teacher for this.
Okay.
Sure.
I guess usually white oak is steamed and bent. What else have you done in that procedure besides white oak?
Besides white oak, well, I've had to steam quite a bit of red oak actually over the years.
Do they work as well as white oak? Those other woods?
Well, red oak steams up even easier,
okay,
faster, and bends easier, but it's not as good when it's done. You know, it's a continuous pour, so it's not a wood that's fantastic for bow red oak. But I've had to steam a lot of mahogany. I've had to steam cedars, different cedars, to make very twisted planks that I couldn't get enough twist in. You know, so yeah, we have to steam lots of different material. Sure.
An observation and a question. I do a lot of steaming in making furniture.
Sure.
And I use a PVC pipe and a steamer, wallpaper steamer. Get it up to 180, maybe to 210 at the most for temperature. What kind of, do you look at a range like that, or do you go higher?
All I can say is I try to get as hot as I can get it without it catching fire. You know what I mean? You know, so whatever a steam generator puts out, you saw the steam generator that we were using in that video. There was 2 of them in that plastic bag. And those were like, I don't know what those are made for, but I have to find out because I have to build a steam box to steam the frames in Orca. So I'm about to build a steam box, and I'm gonna do it the same way I did it, but I'm not gonna use a plastic bag because they're light pieces. You just pull them out of a steam box very quickly and bend them into the boat. But I'm gonna try to find out what those steam generators are. I don't know if you saw you saw it in the video. There's a tremendous amount of steam coming out of that steam generator. So anything that's, I've tried using turkey basters and all those kinds of different things. Just isn't enough steam. Just, you know, the more steam you can get, the hotter you can get it without it catching fire, the easier it bends.
Second part of my question.
Sure.
Recently, I've been using water softener instead of regular water. I add downy to it,
Yeah.
and I seem to actually bend it a lot easier. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes. Yes, I do it too.
I thought I invented that.
No, they've only been doing that for a couple hundred years.
And it works.
And it works. Yeah.
It also smells good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might want to, the sacrilegious thing that we saw in one of the videos, not here, was plastic ribs. You might want to talk about what you're dabbling in the black art.
Well, I do boat work, but I don't necessarily just use wood. Obviously, you use metal, you know, you use fastenings, you use all kinds of things, and I finally came across a situation where I needed to reframe a 60-foot Trumpy power yacht, and we had one summer to do it, and I had to reframe it and replank it and refloor timber it, and there was just no way in the world I was going to get away with it using wood, you know, and it's got a very hard bilge turn, so I used what they call it's a high-density polyethylene. It's what is it? HDMW, high density molecular weight, HDMW, I believe it is. But I've used it in many, many situations. Actually, right around the corner from my shop right now in Bristol is a shop where I've been helping a friend of mine build a 43-foot schooner. I was actually responsible for some of the design work about procedures and different things, not the design of the shape of the boat, but how we were going to go about building it. And, you know, I've had something to do with it. I made some videos there and you know, guided him in his project, but he's done the work. And I can tell you for sure, this is the saw that he used to cut the planks. And he was not a shipwright. I've never seen a planking job as nice as the planking job that's going on in that school in my lifetime, ever, once. You know, and I'm telling you that he cut the planks. I taught him how to do it. He cut the planks on a bench to progressive bevel, put them on the boat, no fitting, zero. You can't put human hair in the seams. So they're progressive bevel sewn seams.
What was the process of getting involved with rebuilding an Orca? How did that all come about?
Well, you know, a previous videographer of mine and myself were partners, and you know, I wanted to do boat building, and my first idea was that I was going to build a skiff. I was going to build one anyhow. So we got together, and that was one of the first things that we videoed was building of a skiff. And then I built a dory, and later on I built a V-bottom skiff, which was a design of mine. So also was the dory and the skiff. But you know, we're always thinking, well, how can we get a project that will last a certain amount of, you know, a longer time, so it just doesn't just end, you know, in a week or a couple of weeks, you know. So I wanted a large project, and you know, I figured that we're going to need a boat that's you know, that's famous, you know, and you know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to build Constitution, you know what I mean? It's just a little bit too much for me, you know. So we just, you know, we came up with the idea to build Orca, you know, and I think that was a very good idea because I think it's popular. It's known around the world. It's probably one of the most well-known boats in the entire world. And you know, what I'm looking for is exposure. You know, because I'm trying to earn money, that's what I'm trying to do. So I picked Orca.
So what's the timeline to completion roughly?
We have no timeline.
Okay.
I have no idea how much money it's going to cost, and I have no idea how long it's going to take. You know, all I can tell you is I'm going to go about it as fast as I can, but you know, when those novies and things like that were built in lobster boats years ago, you know, some people think that, you know, a shop had 2 people in it working on a lobster boat. Now, that's not the way it was done. The Novies probably had 20 people working on those boats at the same time. You know what I mean? Somebody was doing the shear clamp while somebody else was putting the planking on, you know, and they get them done very rapidly. So, you know, I've complicated the project by deciding to shoot videos on it as well. So it's going to take considerably longer than it would take if Tom wasn't around. But, but Tom is actually holding the whole thing together. So we, you know, I'm going to shoot videos of it. Like I say, it complicates the matter, but it's going to take a lot longer than it would normally. I wouldn't expect that boat to be done for a couple of years.
Okay.
This is a little bit of a different question, but you've been describing it, it's so fascinating, your project and a lot of the modern tools that you've been working on. And as I'm listening to you, maybe because I've just done some historical things, I wonder about the boat building, how they did back to 16, 17, and 1800s, they wouldn't have had all the tools. Maybe you answered part of my question in that they had more people. But, and is there any, have you ever worked on a really, really old boat like that? And is there anything that still exists that's really old?
Well, you know, I've worked on some boats that are 100 years old or 150 years old possibly, but I think the methodology that was being used at that point, they actually had power tools, a lot of power tools and stuff. As you go way back in time, they didn't have power tools. So everything was done differently. Planking wasn't sawn out. It was split out, you know, and then somebody had to take an axe or an adze or something and chew it all up with an axe or an adze. So tremendous amount of labor. You know, power tools, when power tools came out, I mean to tell you, we don't even have an inkling of how much labor they saved. But it's just fantastic amount of labor, so, you know, that's...
What was the first boat that you ever built?
First boat that I ever built? Oh my goodness, I suspect that it was probably a work skiff. Yeah, I'm sure it was a work skiff. Yeah,
How big was it?
Oh, 16 feet, you know, 16 feet. I built a couple of plywood ones over the years. Never liked that idea too much. We built skiffs at home when we were kids, you know, and then I think one of the first actual boatyard jobs I got was at Ram Point Marina, and the owner asked me, well, he didn't ask me, he said, "You're gonna build a skiff," you know, because he sold a lot of oyster. They did oyster farming down there, you know, or they had an oyster run in Salt Pond. So, you know, I built probably half a dozen skiffs for them. And, you know, most of the work that I've done over the years has been repair work, actually. Repair work being, you learn a lot with repair work because you learn a lot about what people did, you know, about why they did it, you know, what was done wrong, you know, you start thinking the way they were thinking, and, you know, and you come up with, you know, ideas about where their thought train just kind of stopped, and then they made a mistake over here, you know, and you can't just repair it exactly the same way. So, awful lot of thinking and a lot of knowledge that you can gain in repair work.
On the average, how long did it take you to make a skiff?
Oh, I used to build an 18-foot skiff in 40 hours. In 40 hours. The last one I did, I shot video on it, and it probably took at least 3 weeks. At least 3 weeks. But of course, I wasn't putting 8 full hours in a day. You know, you kind of get done with the video you want to shoot, and you get done with your work, and you know, so you stop. So, yeah, like I say, it complicates the whole situation. But I think it's just become something different I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to just build a boat. I'm trying to create videos.
And by doing that, you're teaching other people how to do what you do.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Thanks.
though a number of the people here are furniture builders and so forth.
Sure.
Do you have any advice on the types of, because building a boat uses wood that would be probably very useful outdoors. And do you have any preference on the types of woods you would recommend people to use for outdoor projects, like Adirondack chairs or picnic tables, types of fasteners or lack of fasteners even?
Well, I know a lot of furniture is put together without fasteners, with different methods, trunnels and all kinds of different joinery and different things like that. And, most furniture is made of hardwoods, obviously. And, I just think that when you're dealing with oaks, you certainly have to get real good, nice seasoned material, because if you build furniture out of any kind of green oak or anything like that, you could have some pretty serious problems with it afterwards, and it'll let you down, So, it's, I just came across a source of black locust that was really impressive. I called a man in New York. He has 300 trailer truck loads of black locust logs sitting in his log yard. 300 trailer truck loads. I don't think people like us really realize that much lumber is actually around. And he's probably got 10 acres of sawn black locust. If I was going to build some furniture, I'd go get black locust.
Give his phone number.
I have it.
Yeah, do you have any plans? I know you have the Heversoft boat, either in parallel with Orca or at post Orca.
Well, I think Orca's going to go along not terribly rapidly, because it's Tom and I working together on it. Just Tom and I. That's it. That's probably all I need. Tom does the videography, but he also helps me do the work, and I think he's happy with that. So he's learning a new trade, and we get along great. So I'm going to keep a minimal crew. I might hire someone else, but what's going to happen, I believe, when the hauling season here slows down a little bit, and I get some money in my pocket, I can get my Heversoft taken from Wickford, Rhode Island, to my shop. I'm going to put a new stem in it, and a new, what they call a gripe, which is a piece that connects the stem to the forefoot or to the keel in my boat. And I'm probably going to put, scarf or get rid of all the butt blocks in it and scarf pieces into it where all the butts are. I don't plan on completing the whole project, but I think at the same time we're going to be lofting Orca at the same time. We have enough room to loft Orca and do some work on my boat. Then once I get that boat lofted and we get all the molds made, we can make all the molds. And when I start actually, setting up the molds and starting to build the boat, I'll probably have to remove my boat from the shop. I won't have enough room. So it's going to parallel for a little while.
So on the Orca, are you working from original plans of the original Orca, or remade plans, or just?
I have no plans.
Okay.
I don't know where to get a set of plans for a no-big lobster boat. I have one set of plans, lines drawings for a no-big lobster boat, but it's for a much older and smaller boat. So, and that boat is only 10 feet wide. Tom and I actually did some scaling on it today just to figure out, how big that boat was, how wide it was, and how wide the transom was, and all those kinds of things. Basically, what I have is, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a tremendous amount of knowledge, but I got a fair amount of knowledge about no-big boats because I worked on so many of them over the years in the boatyard. So I have a knowledge of the construction, and I also have a knowledge of the shape of the boat. Of the shapes of those boats and the reasons why they were shaped that way. So when they got altered over the years, they made them much, much wider and much, much beamier, much heavier, much stronger. As power came up, as there was more and more power available, they wanted bigger boats and they wanted them to go faster. So I've seen the boats from quite early designs, to the latest designs. It's up to me to really take from pictures, which are not the easiest thing to work with because they got perspective in them, and you have a picture that's not the same scale as the next picture, so you're trying to scale something like you take like a fender that's like 21 inches or a barrel, those pickle barrels that are 31 inches tall. So you get a pair of dividers and pick up the pickle barrel and then decide what percentage maybe you lost because of the perspective in the picture, and try to figure out what the width of the transom is and all these different things, and then combine that with the appearance of it as you draw it, because you might have dimensions. You come up with all kinds of dimensions, but is the transom square, or is it rounded, or how rounded? What is the radius on the corners and all these different things? It's a trick. That's one of the harder things I've done. One of the very much harder things. I'm not even done with it yet, but it's been I would say difficult for numbers of reasons, because I think three-dimensional drawings are just something that's very little information out there anymore on three-dimensional drawings. I don't get an opportunity to do it my whole life. I've done it here and there, so I sit down at the drawing board acting like an architect, and I'm not really an architect, but I know what shape it is.
So will you make up a full it's lofting, is right? If I'm remembering right, the lofting plans that show each rib throughout from stem to stern, all that stuff.
There'll be a section every 3 feet. Every 3 feet to build it over. When they built Novi's years ago, they didn't have a section every 3 feet. That'd be something that's basically come from people in the United States built many more molds. They didn't even loft those boats up there. Every boat in Nova Scotia was built from the previous molds that they had from the last boat. And they'd say, well, geez, we'd like it to be a little bit wider over here. How much wider? Oh, about this much. Well, what is that? 4 inches? They don't even care. Let's make it like this. So they put the molds much further apart, and they didn't have to have any accuracy. When you put them 3 feet apart, and you were to stretch a batten over one, if one of them was a half an inch off or something, you'd know it right away. So your lofting becomes, as you put these molds closer and closer together, your lofting becomes more and more important. Otherwise you could set the molds up, and then you're just going to have to do quite a bit of ferring on the molds, in order to shape it up properly.
I'm finding it really interesting you're talking about the shipwrights and all this stuff going on in Nova Scotia, because my ancestors actually came from Noville, England in the early 1600s to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland as shipwrights.
As shipwrights, yeah. Yeah. I wonder, and I've wondered over the years, how much of their knowledge and how much of their skills and how much of their, design qualities and all those kinds of things came from Europe. I have no information on it whatsoever. That doesn't interest me. That interests me because, I love the way it's handed down. It gets handed down. And like I say, over the years, it gets altered as it goes. Never mind that they alter it for size and displacement and power and use and everything else, but it's also altered because of the materials that are available and also the tools that are available. So, a lot of the methodology that we use in the United States really is founded around the use of power tools.
We've been searching we talked to Universal, and there are no lines of any of the Orca boats, Orca 1 or 2. They found these random boats and just used them for the movie and then abandoned them, basically. They no longer exist, neither of these boats exist. And we're on the hunt now for Novi's. You can't find them.
I'm drawing my own set of lines to it. I still, I'm not beyond... I'm not a person that worries about being embarrassed. I really don't care about it. If I wanted to change those molds or something along the lines before I actually set it up and get planking it, obviously, but I actually drew the boat a little bit wider when I first drew it, and because we had thoughts of building the boat. Well, there's a famous line in the movie about we're going to need a bigger boat, right? Well, we decided that we would build a bigger boat, and there was a couple of reasons for it. One was that line. We thought that would help, as far as exposure goes. But we also figured, we'll make it more of a legitimate charter boat. because that boat right there, originally was a fairly narrow boat, and when they put that tower on it and all that kind of stuff, I mean, we're talking about a boat here that was totally unsafe, you know, and uncomfortable. And you wouldn't want to charter it, believe me, you wouldn't even want to go on board the thing, it was that bad. But we decided, well, we would make it wider. Well, we've also since abandoned that idea because we've come up with this, you know, understanding. Well, I've had this understanding for a while, but I never was really married to it. But now I'm starting to get the idea that we would put gyro stabilization in the boat. So it doesn't have to be made any wider than it was originally. The stabilization system is going to make it a bigger boat.
Do you use that big chainsaw to hog out the tenon to fit that big mortise too?
Yeah. I use a chainsaw for whatever a chainsaw will do that I can't do, you know, as easy with some other tool. You know, I use a chainsaw quite a bit, but I've got it sharpened quite sharp. I always run the chain very tightly, you know, and when you run a chain as tight as I run a chain, you need a massive amount of oil because you're just going to burn the tip off otherwise. You know, so like on my chainsaw, I've adapted a little oil can to it that I can pump oil, you know, and then I sharpen it on a different angle, you know what I mean? I might only sharpen it 10 degrees. Sometimes I've got them sharpened all the way down to almost 0. So I sharpen it straight across. So the chain doesn't want to, you know, pull to the side. Each tooth, this tooth wants to pull this way, this tooth wants to pull this way. And if the chain's loose, well, you get this real wide girth when you cut something. So, you know, I've got my chainsaw down to I would call it a woodworking tool. You know, you can split a pencil line in half with it. So
you don't have to do very much cleanup on that big mortise.
Well, I didn't get that close to it. I had to clean it up.
Any other questions? Go ahead. You're another one? Okay.
Yeah, just a question about the term progressive bevel. You're not changing the bevel as you go down the plank, right?
Yes.
You are.
Absolutely.
You're turning that.
Turning that as you saw.
As you saw.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the way this saw works is I cut, over the years I've just never been happy about the way that spiling was done, or the way, you know, even well, the only book I ever read from cover to cover was Howard Chappell's book on boat building. You know, and it taught me how to spile planks and all these different things, and I did that over the years. And you know, when I get forced to do repair work and everything, I used to think, this system just isn't working right for me. I can't make this work accurately. I just, you know, it just, I started thinking, I want to cut the planks out upside down because I want the width that I take up against the framing to be the control width rather than the outside of the plank. So basically, when I cut a plank out, I'm cutting to the inside of the plank, the width, and the bevel that's added adds the bevel to the plank rather than deducting it.
Oh, so you mark out a plank and you put like marks on it. Say, okay, I want 6 degrees,
5 degrees here, 5.5 here, 5.5 here, 6 degrees, whatever it is.
So you run along with your hand on one hand on
This
the
thing
hand.
is designed so that it changes 1 degree per revolution, a tiniest bit short, maybe 7/8 of a degree with 1 revolution. And then you look at so in other words, safely, you can rotate this 1 rotation in a degree change. And then you might look down at the degree readout and then just add just a little tiny bit to it like that, you know, to get it to come up to the.
So you're walking down the plank and you're hitting these marks.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've reframed and replanked. I can't tell you how many boats with that saw right there. And that's that particular saw. But when I was doing the ones in Coronet and Newport, those are progressive bevel sawn too. They're 4 inches thick, progressive bevel sawn. But I made a bigger saw.
You're continuously moving that with your left hand and you push along with it.
That's right.
Okay. I got it.
And there are videos. You can go on the Tips from a
I think
and watch him do this.
Yeah, and I alter the side of the saw so it cuts up much closer to the blade, and welded this piece on the side. So this just follows along the batten. Basically, what I have is a I spiled I divided the hull. So like I say, it's I'll do it on spiled planks, all kinds of planks, but that particular schooner that I'm working on has got, like I say, edge set progressive bevels on. So it's all straight on one edge. One edge of the plank is perfectly straight, one end to the other. I put that on a woodworking bench, and I got a straight edge on the bench. It just laps over it, put the saw up against the straight edge, run down, that's it, that's the end of that. It's simple as pie, right? And then I have this batten that I put down there that represents the width of the plank, right? All the planks are exactly the same width and the same station, right? So I put this batten down on top and follow that, and it cuts the plank out the proper width, and all I have to do is alter the bevel as I go. It's pretty simple to do, actually. It's probably 10% or 5% of the labor that normally people would go through to fit a plank. Seriously, it's that easy to do.
With the right tools.
With the right tools. Anyone else? Yeah. Sure, come on.
Okay. Well, why don't we thank Lou and come up.